"Don't touch that." The words came too late. Isabelle Durant's fingers had already closed around the gold chain at Vanessa Monroe's throat. The flight attendant's hand moved with the casual certainty of someone who had never been told no, her French manicure catching the cabin light as she pulled. The clasp held for one terrible second against the back of Vanessa's neck. Then it snapped. The sound was small. A tiny metallic click, barely audible over the hum of the engines. But in row 18 of Apex Airlines Flight 447, that sound detonated like a bomb. Jordan Monroe, 16 years old and sitting in the middle seat, made a noise that wasn't quite a word. His grandmother's body had jerked forward with the force of Isabelle's pull, and his hand shot out instinctively to steady her, Amara Monroe. 14 and pressed against the window screamed. Not loud, not theatrical, but a genuine sound of shock that cut through the pre-flight murmur of 200 passengers settling into their seats. Isabelle Durant stood in the aisle holding a dead woman's necklace. The chain hung from her closed fist, swaying slightly. The small gold cross pendant caught the overhead light. The tiny diamond, no bigger than a grain of rice, threw a single point of brightness onto the seat back in front of them. Isabelle looked at Vanessa Monroe like she had just solved a problem, like removing a piece of contraband, like doing her job. She had not solved a problem. She had made the worst mistake of her professional life, and Vanessa Monroe, 68 years old, was already standing up. She rose slowly from her seat. Not with the stiffness of age, but with the deliberate weight of someone gathering themselves. Her movement had the quality of geology of continental plates shifting into new positions of pressure building beneath a surface that had held steady for a very long time. The cabin around them began to still. Conversations died mid-sentence. A man across the aisle lowered his phone. A woman 2 rows back turned her head. Isabelle Durant was tall, elegant auburn hair pulled back in a sleek, low bun that had probably taken 20 minutes to perfect that morning. Her Apex Airlines uniform fit her like it had been tailored, which it had. Navy blazer pencil skirt, pearl earrings that were technically against regulation, but no one ever called her on because she wore them with such authority. She had emerald green eyes and sharp cheekbones, and the kind of sophisticated beauty that made people unconsciously straighten up when she walked past. She was 42 years old and had been a flight attendant for 12 years, and she had never, not once in all that time, encountered a passenger who didn't eventually back down. Vanessa Monroe was not backing down. She stood at 5'6". She wore comfortable black pants and a soft gray cashmere sweater. No jewelry except for the necklace that was now in Isabelle's hand, and a simple wedding band she still wore 25 years after her husband died. Her hair was silver, cut short and natural. Her face carried 68 years with the kind of dignity that couldn't be bought or taught, only earned through time. She looked at Isabelle Durant with eyes that had seen Birmingham in the 1960s and Wall Street in the 1980s and more boardrooms than Isabelle Durant had ever walked into. "Give me my mother's necklace," Vanessa said. Her voice was quiet, absolutely level. The kind of quiet that was somehow more frightening than any volume could have been. Isabelle blinked once. Something flickered across her face. Not quite recognition. Not yet understanding. Just the first small hairline crack in the certainty she'd walked down the aisle with. "Ma'am, this jewelry posed a safety." "Give me my mother's necklace," Vanessa said again. Exactly the same. Same tone, same volume, same absolutely terrifying calm. The cabin had gone completely silent now. Every passenger within 10 rows had stopped whatever they were doing and turned to watch. What happened in the next 45 minutes would become a case study. It would be taught in business schools and discussed in diversity training and referenced in employee handbooks. It would go viral 3 times. It would change policy at 6 major airlines. But in that moment, in row 18, all that existed was a 68-year-old black woman standing in front of a 42-year-old white flight attendant who had just made a choice she could not take back. "Before we go any further," Vanessa said, still standing, still looking at Isabelle Durant with those steady eyes, "let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged before you even opened your mouth? If this moment already has your blood boiling, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because what happens next will restore your faith in justice." 6 hours earlier, Vanessa Monroe had woken up in her Chicago apartment overlooking Lake Michigan and made a decision. She was going to take this flight. Not in first class, where her assistant Diana had originally booked her. Not even in business class, where she could at least stretch her legs. She was going to fly coach in row 18 in a middle seat if possible, dressed like any other grandmother traveling to see family. Because Vanessa Monroe owned 51% of Apex Airlines, and she wanted to know what it felt like to be an ordinary passenger on one of her planes. She had acquired her controlling stake 5 years ago through Monroe Capital Group, the investment firm she'd built from nothing after her husband died. $4 billion in assets under management, holdings in 17 companies across 6 industries, and Apex Airlines, which she'd bought quietly through a subsidiary with non-disclosure agreements thick enough to ensure that nobody except the board knew who really owned it. The board knew. The executive team knew. The pilots definitely didn't know. And the flight attendants, Vanessa thought as she packed her small carry-on bag, absolutely did not know. Which was exactly the point. For the last 3 months, complaints had been filtering up through channels. Passenger complaints. Specifically, complaints from passengers of color about being treated differently, being questioned more, being watched more carefully, being asked to prove things that white passengers weren't asked to prove. 14 formal complaints in 18 months. All of them marked resolved internally. All of them Vanessa had discovered actually meaning buried. She wanted to see what resolved internally actually looked like from the passenger side. So she booked a coach ticket under her own name, Vanessa Monroe, which appeared nowhere in Apex's corporate literature. She packed light. She wore her mother's necklace, the one her mother had worn every single day for 50 years until she died 6 months ago. Simple gold chain. Small cross pendant with a diamond chip. The kind of jewelry that wouldn't draw attention but meant everything to the person wearing it. And she called her grandchildren. Jordan, 16, lanky and quiet, who wore his father's watch because his father, Vanessa's son, had died 8 years ago in a car accident, and the watch was all Jordan wanted to keep. Amara, 14, bright and observant, who wore a delicate gold bracelet that had belonged to her mother who had died in childbirth, bringing Amara into the world. 3 people wearing their dead loved ones in gold and memory boarding Apex Airlines Flight 447 from Chicago to Atlanta. The gate agent had smiled at them pleasantly. The ticket scanner had beeped green. They'd walked down the jetway like any other family. Jordan had immediately started the familiar argument. "Grandma, I called the window seat first." Amara rolled her eyes. "You did not. I called it on the drive here." Vanessa smiled. "Jordan, baby, your sister's right. She called it yesterday." Jordan opened his mouth, thought better of it, slid into the middle seat without another word. That was Vanessa. Patient measured the kind of grandmother who had raised 3 children on her own and knew exactly when to be firm and when to let things go. She settled into the aisle seat. Amara took the window. Jordan wedged himself between them with his tablet. Around them, the plane filled up. Business travelers, families, a couple arguing quietly 3 rows back, a man in a suit typing furiously on his laptop across the aisle. Normal. Ordinary. Tuesday morning. Vanessa adjusted her seatbelt. Her mother's necklace settled against her collarbone. She could feel the small weight of the cross the way she'd felt it every morning for 6 months since she'd taken it off her mother's body in the hospital and put it on her own neck and never taken it off since. The cabin lights brightened. The overhead bins clicked shut. and Isabelle Durant began her walk down the aisle, clipboard in hand, scanning rows with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times. When she reached row 18, she stopped. She looked at Vanessa Monroe. She looked at the children. She looked at the jewelry. And something behind her emerald green eyes shifted in a way that would cost her everything. "Ma'am." Isabelle Durant's voice had the smooth quality of expensive fabric. Silk over steel. Pleasant in the way that made you pay attention without quite knowing why. Vanessa looked up from helping Jordan with his seatbelt. The flight attendant was beautiful in that precise, maintained way. Auburn hair without a strand out of place. Makeup applied with professional care. Pearl earrings that caught the light. The Navy Apex uniform tailored to fit her figure like she'd stepped out of a recruitment poster. "Yes," Vanessa said. "I'm going to need you to remove your jewelry before takeoff." Vanessa's hands stilled on Jordan's seatbelt. She looked at Isabelle Durant with the careful attention of someone making sure they heard correctly. "I'm sorry, what regulation is?" That Isabel's smile didn't waver. It was a customer service smile, the kind that had been practiced in a mirror and perfected over years. "Metal jewelry poses a safety hazard in emergency situations." Vanessa finished clicking Jordan's seatbelt into place. She sat back in her seat and looked at the flight attendant with a calm that came from 68 years of hearing things that didn't make sense and deciding how to respond. "I've flown hundreds of times," Vanessa said evenly. "I've never heard this rule." "Well," Isabelle said, her smile developing a slightly harder edge. "It's policy. I'm authorized to enforce it." The words hung in the air. Across the aisle, a Hispanic man in his early 50s with the solid build of someone who'd worked with his hands his whole life, glanced up from his phone. His name was Thomas Rivera, retired firefighter, and he had very good instincts about when a situation was about to go wrong. "Can you show me the policy in writing?" Vanessa asked. Her voice remained absolutely level. Isabelle blinked. It was a tiny movement, barely perceptible, but it was there. A small recalibration happening behind those green eyes. "I don't carry the policy manual with me, ma'am, but I am authorized to enforce safety regulations." "Authorized," Vanessa repeated. She let the words sit there. Jordan shifted uncomfortably in the middle seat. "Grandma," he said quietly, "what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby," Vanessa said without taking her eyes off Isabelle. "Nothing's wrong." Amara pressed closer to the window, her 14-year-old instincts already picking up on something in the air that felt dangerous in a way she couldn't name. Isabelle's professional pleasantness was developing fissures. "Ma'am, I understand this may seem inconvenient, but—" "This necklace," Vanessa interrupted gently, "belonged to my mother. She passed away 6 months ago. She wore it every day of her adult life. It came to me when she died, and I've worn it every day since." She paused. "It's not coming off." The cabin around them had developed that particular quality of attention. The way people's conversations don't quite stop, but their focus shifts. The man across the aisle. Thomas had lowered his phone entirely. 2 rows back, a white woman with silver hair and reading glasses. Dr. Helen Cartwright, retired professor of constitutional law, had stopped reading and was listening with the sharp attention of someone who'd spent 35 years teaching students to recognize injustice when they heard it. "Ma'am," Isabelle said, and the pleasantness was almost entirely gone, now replaced by something that sounded more like a warning. "I understand that you have sentimental attachment to the item, but safety regulations." "What regulation?" Vanessa asked. "Specifically, cite the FAA code." Silence. "Because I'm familiar," Vanessa continued in that same calm voice, "with FAA requirements. I know about metal objects and medical imaging. I know about security screening protocols. I am not familiar with any regulation requiring passengers to remove jewelry during flight. So I'm asking you specifically which regulation you're enforcing. Isabelle's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'll need to consult with the lead flight attendant. You do that, Vanessa said. We'll wait. Isabelle turned and walked toward the front of the cabin with the kind of stride that meant someone was controlling themselves very carefully. Jordan looked at his grandmother. Grandma, are we going to get in trouble? Vanessa put her hand on his arm. No, sweetheart. We are not going to get in trouble. We haven't done anything wrong. Then why is she mad? Sometimes, Vanessa said carefully, choosing her words, people make rules for some people that they don't make for other people. And when that happens, the right thing to do is to stand still and be calm and tell the truth. Amara turned from the window. Her voice was quiet but very clear. Is this because we're black? Vanessa held her granddaughter's gaze. She didn't look away. She didn't soften it. It might be baby, she said. I don't know yet, but I know that we have done nothing wrong. Do you understand? Amara nodded. Her hand moved unconsciously to the gold bracelet on her wrist, the one that had been her mother's. Thomas Rivera, across the aisle, leaned slightly toward them. He had salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who'd run into burning buildings for a living and wasn't easily intimidated. Excuse me, he said quietly. I heard all of that. Just want you to know if you need a witness, I'm right here. Vanessa looked at him. Thank you. Retired firefighter, Thomas said. Chicago local, too. I know what it looks like when someone's being targeted. He glanced toward the front of the cabin where Isabelle had disappeared. And I've got my phone ready. 3 rows forward. Dr. Cartwright turned in her seat. She was 67, with silver hair cut in a practical bob, and the sharp eyes of someone who still read 3 newspapers a day. Her voice carried the precise diction of someone who'd spent decades teaching students to speak clearly. I'm a witness as well, she said. I heard every word. And for the record, there is no FAA regulation requiring removal of jewelry on commercial flights. The regulations cited in TSA screening are entirely different jurisdictional authority. Vanessa looked at this woman she'd never met. Thank you, she said. Dr. Helen Cartwright, the woman said. Constitutional law. Savannah. If this escalates, I'm happy to provide a written statement. Before Vanessa could respond, Isabelle returned. She wasn't alone. She'd brought backup. A male flight attendant, early 30s, military-bearing nameplate reading Trevor Blake, white, square-jawed, with the look of someone who followed rules without questioning them. Mrs. Monroe, Trevor said in a voice that carried artificial authority. He consulted a passenger manifest. I'm Trevor Blake, part of the cabin crew. I understand we have a safety concern. Vanessa looked at him. We don't have a safety concern. We have a flight attendant making up regulations that don't exist. Trevor blinked. His script hadn't prepared him for this. Ma'am, crew members are empowered to make judgment calls regarding passenger safety. Under what authority, Vanessa asked. Cited from what specific regulation, Trevor looked at Isabelle. Isabelle's face had gone slightly pink. Thomas Rivera pulled out his phone. Not aggressively, just deliberately. I'd like to know that too, he said, because I'm recording this conversation and I want that regulation cited on record. Sir Isabelle said sharply, this is a private conversation. You're having it in the middle of a full airplane, Thomas said. That's not private, that's public. Now what is the regulation you're citing? 2 rows forward. Dr. Cartwright spoke without turning around. Her voice was dry and precise as a legal brief. I can confirm that there is no such regulation. The FAA requires metal accessories removed for certain medical procedures under Part 121.803. That's a different context entirely. This is a compliance claim without regulatory foundation. Isabelle turned. Are you a lawyer? No, Dr. Cartwright said. I was a professor of constitutional law for 35 years. I know my regulations, and I know when someone's making them up. A sound moved through the cabin. Not quite a laugh. Something closer to a collective exhale that had recognition hiding inside it. Ma'am Trevor tried again, looking at Vanessa. If you continue to refuse crew directives, I'm not refusing a crew directive, Vanessa interrupted quietly. I'm declining to comply with a fabricated policy that targets me specifically. If there's a regulation requiring all passengers to remove jewelry, I'd like to see it applied to everyone on this plane. She gestured around the cabin. I count 7 people in this section alone wearing necklaces, rings, bracelets. Are you asking them to remove their jewelry? Silence. That's what I thought Vanessa said. She pulled out her phone. 1 speed dial. The name on the screen read, Diana Fletcher. The call connected immediately. Diana Vanessa said, her voice still perfectly calm. I need you to pull up Apex Airlines Employee Conduct Protocol. Flight Attendant Isabelle Durant, Durant. On the other end, Diana Fletcher's voice came through crisp and efficient. Pulling it now. Mrs. Monroe, do you want legal on standby? Not yet, Vanessa said. Give me a few more minutes. She set the phone on the tray table, still connected, still on speaker, still letting Diana hear everything. Isabelle stared at the phone, then at Vanessa. Something was starting to shift in her eyes. Not understanding yet, but the first edge of uncertainty. Mrs. Monroe, she said slowly. Who are you calling? My assistant, Vanessa said simply. Your assistant needs to end this call, Isabelle said. You're disrupting the cabin. From across the aisle, Thomas Rivera laughed. It was a short, incredulous sound. She's disrupting the cabin. You're the one harassing a grandmother about her dead mother's necklace? Sir, final warning. Isabelle snapped. Warning of what Thomas said. And his voice had gotten very quiet in a way that was more alarming than loudness. You'll remove me too. Go ahead, remove me. Let's see how that conversation goes when 200 passengers are an hour late because you decided to power trip over jewelry. A young man 4 rows back had pulled out his phone. Black late 30s, well-dressed with the casual confidence of someone used to being on camera. His name was Marcus Webb, tech entrepreneur, and his live stream had just gone live. We're on Apex Airlines Flight 447, Marcus said into his phone, speaking clearly enough for anyone nearby to hear. And we're watching a flight attendant harass an elderly black woman about her necklace. This is happening right now. Isabelle turned, saw the phone, saw the red recording light. You need to put that away, she said. I'm a passenger on a commercial flight, Marcus said calmly. I have every legal right to record interactions with airline staff. Would you like me to cite that regulation? Isabelle's professional mask was cracking. Her cheeks were flushed. Her hands had formed fists at her sides. Trevor stepped in, trying to salvage something. Captain's been notified, he said. If you don't comply, we'll return to the gate. Every head in their section turned. Return to the gate, Thomas Rivera said, his voice heavy with disbelief. Over a necklace. Doctor. Cartwright's voice came again, still not turning around, still perfectly calm. The captain's discretionary authority exists within FAA guidelines, not above them. Those are 2 different things, dear. Isabelle stared at the back of Dr. Cartwright's silver head. Are you a lawyer? She demanded again. I told you, Dr. Cartwright said patiently. I was a professor. For 35 years. I paid attention. The cabin erupted in small sounds. A few people laughed. Someone clapped once, then stopped. Vanessa Monroe sat very still. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her mother's necklace rested against her collarbone. And she was watching Isabelle Durant the way you watch something you need to understand completely before you respond to it. Isabelle Trevor said quietly, pulling her aside. But Isabelle wasn't listening to Trevor anymore. She was looking at Vanessa Monroe, at this black woman in row 18 who wasn't backing down, wasn't getting flustered, wasn't playing the role Isabelle had expected her to play. And something in Isabelle Durant's expression changed. The professional pleasantness burned away entirely. What was left underneath was something raw and reflexive and ugly. She leaned in close enough that only Vanessa and the children and maybe Thomas across the aisle could hear. "I don't know who you think you are," she said quietly, "but on this plane, I am the authority, and you will do what I tell you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa Monroe looked at Isabelle Durant for a long moment. She was 68 years old. She'd grown up in Birmingham, Alabama in the 1950s and 60s. She'd been told to sit in the back. She'd been told to use different doors. She'd been told in 100 different ways that she was less than that the rules were different for her. And she had outlasted every single person who had ever told her so. "My phone." Vanessa said, her voice quiet and absolutely steady, "has been recording since you began this interaction. Every word you've said, every word these passengers have said, every word I've said." She glanced at the phone on the tray table. "Including what you just said to me." Isabelle looked at the phone, her face drained of color, and my assistant Vanessa continued. "Who is an executive coordinator for my firm is currently documenting this entire incident. She has this flight number. She has your full name. She has a list of witnesses." She paused. "Would you like to continue telling me who has authority on this plane?" The silence that followed was absolute. Isabelle Durant stood frozen in the aisle. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. The elegant composure she'd worn like armor had developed visible cracks. Trevor Blake touched her elbow. "Isabelle," he said under his breath. "We should get the captain," Isabelle said. Her voice had gone thin. Trevor hesitated, then nodded and headed toward the cockpit. Thomas Rivera, across the aisle, hadn't lowered his phone. His recording continued steady and deliberate. 37 years as a firefighter had taught him exactly when to document and when to intervene. Right now, documentation was the intervention. 4 rows back, Marcus Webb's live stream viewer count was climbing. 50 people watching. Then 200. Then 500. The comments scrolled past too fast to read. "This is insane," someone typed. "Is this real? I'm recording this on my end, too. Someone get this woman's name." In row 18, Vanessa Monroe sat with the kind of stillness that only comes from practice. From years of walking into rooms where she wasn't welcome and deciding that their discomfort was not her problem. Grandma Jordan whispered. His hand found hers. "Are you okay? I'm fine, baby," she said quietly. She squeezed his hand once. "We're all fine." But Amara was watching the flight attendant with those sharp 14-year-old eyes, the kind that see more than adults realize. "She's scared," Amara said softly. "Look at her hands." Vanessa looked. Isabelle's hands were trembling slightly. Barely visible, but there. The tremor of someone whose script had been flipped and who didn't know what page to turn to next. A younger flight attendant appeared from the back galley. Hispanic woman, late 20s nameplate, reading Sofia Ramirez. She'd been working for Apex for exactly 3 months and was still learning how to navigate the unwritten hierarchies of cabin crew culture. She approached hesitantly. "Ms. Durant?" Sofia said carefully. "Is there something I can help with?" Isabelle turned to her. The look she gave Sofia was sharp enough to draw blood. "No. Go back to your station." "But if the passenger has a concern, I said go back to your station," Isabelle snapped. Sofia flinched. She glanced at Vanessa, at the children, at Thomas Rivera with his phone still recording. Something moved across her face. Conflict, maybe? Or recognition. But she stepped back. A 6th flight attendant emerged from the forward galley. White woman, mid-20s, blonde hair, and a regulation bun nameplate, reading Grace Palmer. She'd been watching the interaction from a distance, and her instincts were telling her something was very wrong with how this was unfolding. Grace approached quietly. She didn't address Isabelle directly. Instead, she stopped at row 17 and made a show of checking overhead bins close enough to hear everything positioned to intervene if needed. Ma'am Grace said, addressing Vanessa as if they were having a completely separate conversation. "Is there anything I can get for you, water? Something for the children?" Vanessa looked at this young woman, who was clearly trying to create some kind of buffer. "We're fine, thank you." Grace nodded. She didn't leave. She stayed right there, one row forward, a quiet presence that said, "I'm watching this." Isabelle noticed. "Grace," she said coldly, "I don't need assistance here." "I'm not assisting," Grace said mildly. "I'm doing my job." The temperature in the cabin kept dropping. Dr. Cartwright, 3 rows forward, had turned fully around in her seat now. She'd taken off her reading glasses and was watching the scene with the clinical attention of someone cataloging evidence. Next to her, a white man in his 40s with a journalist's notebook had started taking notes. His name was printed on his bag tag, Derek Hall, Chicago Tribune. Trevor Blake returned from the cockpit. Behind him came Captain Michael Santos, 48, Hispanic, with the measured bearing of someone who'd logged 15,000 flight hours and had seen enough passenger conflicts to know the difference between a safety issue and a power struggle. Captain Santos surveyed the scene, a flight attendant visibly shaking, a passenger sitting calmly, 2 children, multiple phones recording. His eyes moved across all of it in about 3 seconds, and his expression didn't change, but something behind it shifted. "What's the situation?" he asked. His voice was neutral. Isabelle straightened. "Captain, this passenger has repeatedly refused to comply with safety directives regarding metal jewelry. I've explained the regulation multiple times, and she's been disruptive and—" "What regulation?" Captain Santos asked. Isabelle stopped. "Sir, you mentioned a regulation about metal jewelry." Which one? Isabelle's mouth worked. It's in the safety manual. The part about hazardous materials in emergency situations." Captain Santos looked at her. "I've been flying for 23 years. I'm not familiar with that regulation. Can you show it to me?" Another beat of silence. From her seat, Dr. Cartwright spoke up. Her voice carried. "Captain, if I may, there is no such regulation. FAA Part 121 addresses, emergency equipment exits, and evacuation procedures. Jewelry is not mentioned in any safety context for passenger wear during flight. I'd be happy to cite the specific sections if needed." Captain Santos looked at Dr. Cartwright. "And you are Dr. Helen Cartwright. I taught constitutional and aviation law for 35 years. I'm quite familiar with the CFR." The captain absorbed this. He looked at Vanessa. "Ma'am, have you been disruptive in any way?" "No, sir," Vanessa said. "I've been sitting in my seat helping my grandchildren get settled." The flight attendant approached me and demanded I remove my late mother's necklace. I asked to see the regulation in writing. She was unable to provide it. I declined to comply with what appears to be an arbitrary directive. Captain Santos looked at the necklace. Small, simple gold. The kind of thing 1,000 passengers wore on 1,000 flights every day. "Ms. Durant," he said quietly, "step aside with me, but Captain now." They moved to the front galley. The conversation was low and tense, too quiet for most of the cabin to hear. But Vanessa could see Isabelle's face going from pink to red to pale, could see the captain's expression getting harder. Thomas Rivera leaned across the aisle. "You doing okay?" Vanessa nodded. "Thank you for recording. 27 years putting out fires," Thomas said. "I know what smoke looks like." He glanced toward the galley. And I know what happens when someone fans the flames instead of putting them out. The captain and Isabelle returned. Captain Santos's face was carefully neutral, but his eyes were cold. "Mrs. Monroe," he said, "I apologize for the confusion. There is no regulation requiring you to remove your jewelry. You're welcome to keep it on." Isabelle made a small sound. "Captain, that will be all." "Ms. Durant," Captain Santos said, "return to your duties. We're already delayed." Isabelle looked at him, then at Vanessa, then at the phone still recording. Her elegant composure had completely shattered. What was left was something raw and defensive and cornered. "This isn't over," she said. It wasn't clear who she was talking to. Captain Santos's voice dropped to something very quiet. "I said that will be all." Isabelle turned and walked toward the back galley. Her movements were stiff, mechanical. The captain looked at Vanessa. "Again, ma'am, I apologize. If you need anything for the remainder of the flight, please let the crew know." "Thank you," Captain Vanessa said. He returned to the cockpit. The door clicked shut behind him. The cabin breathed out. Conversations slowly resumed. The tension began to dissolve like sugar in water. But Vanessa Monroe knew better. She knew this particular kind of anger. The kind that went underground and waited for another opportunity. The kind that didn't forget being embarrassed in public. She looked at Diana's name still on her phone screen. "Diana," she said quietly, "stay on the line." "I'm here," Diana said. "I heard everything. I need you to do something for me. Name it." "Pull Isabelle Durant's complete employment file. Every performance review, every complaint, every incident report. I want to know if this is a pattern or an anomaly. On it. Give me 5 minutes." Vanessa ended the call but kept the phone in her hand. Jordan leaned against her. "Grandma," he said, "that was scary." "I know, baby. Why did she do that?" Vanessa thought about how to answer, how to explain to a 16-year-old boy who'd already lost his father what it meant to be targeted for something you couldn't change and didn't choose. Before she could find the words, the memory came. She was 26 years old. It was 1982. She walked into First Continental Bank in downtown Chicago wearing her best interview suit. Navy blue, perfectly tailored. She had a business plan in a leather folder and enough capital for a commercial loan to start her own investment advisory firm. She'd done everything right. Perfect credit score, recommendation letters, 3 years of financial analysis experience at a major firm. The loan officer was a white man in his 50s. He looked at her application. Then he looked at her. Then he pushed the application back across the desk. "This doesn't seem like something you'd qualify for," he said. His tone was pleasant, almost gentle, like he was doing her a favor. "I have triple the required capital," Vanessa said. "My credit score is 780. I have references from 3 senior partners at Morgan Stanley." The loan officer smiled. "It's just that this type of business requires a certain level of experience and stability. Maybe you should start with something smaller, more appropriate." She'd walked out of that bank and gone directly to a different one. Same application, same credentials, different loan officer, approved within an hour. She'd used that loan to launch Monroe Capital Group. Within 5 years, she'd built it into a $200 million firm. Within 10, $2 billion. Within 15, $4 billion. She'd acquired her first major stake in a public company at 34 the year after her husband died, and everyone told her she was too emotional to manage money. She'd proven them wrong by outperforming the S&P 500 by 12% that year. She'd bought her controlling interest in Apex Airlines 5 years ago, quietly, through 3 shell companies, and enough legal paperwork to ensure nobody knew who actually owned it, except the people who needed to know. She'd done it because she was tired of being underestimated, Tired of being told she didn't belong. Tired of watching other people make decisions that affected her without ever having to answer to her. And she'd kept flying coach deliberately regularly because she wanted to know what her passengers experienced, wanted to see what her employees did when they thought nobody was watching, wanted to understand where the problems were so she could fix them. For 3 months she'd been tracking a pattern, complaints from passengers of color, all of them describing similar experiences. Being questioned more, being watched more carefully, being treated like they didn't belong. 14 formal complaints in 18 months, all marked resolved internally. She'd asked her legal team what resolved internally meant. It means buried, they'd told her. So she'd booked this flight. This specific flight on this specific route with this specific crew because Isabelle Durant's name had appeared on 4 of those 14 complaints. 4 different passengers. 4 different flights. Same pattern. Same resolution buried. Vanessa had wanted to see it for herself. Well, she'd seen it. Her phone buzzed. "Diana," she answered. "Talk to me." Diana's voice was tight. "Mrs. Monroe, you need to hear this. Isabelle Durant has been with Apex for 12 years. In that time, she's accumulated 14 formal passenger complaints, 9 of them from passengers of color, 3 from Latino families, 6 from black passengers." Vanessa closed her eyes. Every single complaint was marked, resolved internally. Diana continued. No disciplinary action, no retraining, no follow-up. The pattern is clear. She targets passengers of color claims safety or policy violations and gets backed up by her supervisors. Who are her supervisors? I'm sending you the chain now. But Mrs. Monroe, there's more. 2 of the complaints were escalated to HR. Both times, HR recommended counseling and bias training. Both times, the recommendations were overridden by the regional operations manager, a man named Patrick Hughes. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Is Patrick Hughes still employed? Yes. Flag his file. I want a meeting with him within 48 hours. Understood. Mrs. Monroe, one more thing. 3 of the passengers who filed complaints have already seen Marcus Webb's live stream. They're reaching out through social media. They want to talk to you. Get me their contact information. I want to hear their stories directly. On it. Vanessa hung up. She looked at her grandchildren. Jordan had his tablet out but wasn't watching it. Amara was staring at the seat back in front of her. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Vanessa said quietly. Amara turned to her. "Grandma," she said, "how many times has that happened to you?" Vanessa considered lying, considered softening it, decided her granddaughter deserved the truth. "More times than I can count, baby. In banks, in stores, in restaurants, on airplanes. More times than I can count." "Does it ever stop?" Vanessa reached over and took Amara's hand. "It stops when people decide it stops. When enough people say this is wrong and refuse to let it continue. It stops when the people in power decide to use that power to fix things instead of protect things." "Are you going to fix it?" Vanessa looked at her granddaughter, 14 years old, wearing her dead mother's bracelet, old enough to understand what was happening, old enough to remember this moment for the rest of her life. "Yes," Vanessa said, "I'm going to fix it." The plane's engines changed pitch. The boarding door closed with a heavy thunk. The gate agent's voice came over the PA system apologizing for the delay. They were 40 minutes late pushing back. Isabelle Durant was nowhere to be seen. She'd disappeared into the back galley and hadn't emerged. But Vanessa knew exactly where this was going. She settled back into her seat. Her mother's necklace rested against her collarbone. The broken clasp was still intact for now, still holding. It wouldn't hold much longer. The plane sat at the gate for another 20 minutes. Vanessa could feel the tension building in the cabin. Passengers checking watches, muttering about connections. The flight attendants moved through their safety checks with visible strain. Grace Palmer stopped at row 18. She crouched down slightly, bringing herself to eye level with Vanessa. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I want you to know I've filed an internal report about what happened. I documented everything I saw and heard." Vanessa looked at this young woman. 26 at most. Probably newer to the job, lower in the hierarchy. Speaking up anyway. "Thank you," Vanessa said. "What's your name?" "Grace Palmer." "Thank you, Grace." That took courage. Grace glanced toward the back galley where Isabelle had disappeared. "I've worked here for 2 years. I've seen this before. Not this exact situation, but the pattern. I just never knew what to do about it." "You did something today," Vanessa said. "You stayed. You witnessed. That matters." "That." Grace nodded once, then stood and continued down the aisle. 5 rows back, Marcus Webb was still live streaming. His viewer count had hit 3,000. The comments were coming in so fast they were just a blur. "Someone find out who this woman is. This flight attendant needs to be fired. I'm never flying Apex again. Contact the airline. Contact the FAA. Contact everyone." Thomas Rivera, across the aisle, leaned over. "My daughter works in social media management," he said to Vanessa. "She just texted me. This is already on Twitter. Hashtag is trending." Vanessa absorbed this information without visible reaction. "What's the hashtag?" He showed her his phone. Hashtag Apex Jewelry Incident. She nodded once. The plane finally began to push back from the gate. The cabin crew took their seats for departure. Isabelle Durant emerged from the back galley and strapped into the jump seat near the rear door. Her face was flushed. Her hands clenched the armrests. Trevor Blake sat in the forward jump seat, stone-faced. Sophia Ramirez and Grace Palmer took positions mid-cabin. The safety demonstration began. Grace did the front section. Sophia did the rear. Neither Isabelle nor Trevor participated. The plane taxied slowly, turned onto the runway. Engines spooled up. Jordan put his hand on Vanessa's arm. "Grandma, are we safe?" "Yes, baby," Vanessa said. "The captain is in control. We're safe." The plane accelerated, lifted, climbed. Vanessa watched Chicago fall away below them. The lake, the skyline, the grid of streets, everything getting smaller. They reached cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign chimed off, and Isabelle Durant unbuckled her jump seat and walked down the aisle. She wasn't heading for the galley. She was heading for row 18. Thomas Rivera saw her coming. His hand moved to his phone. Dr. Cartwright saw her coming. She turned in her seat. Marcus Webb saw her coming. His live stream camera tracked her movement. Grace Palmer saw her coming. She stood up from her jump seat. "Ms. Durant." "Sit down," Grace Isabelle said without looking at her. Grace hesitated. Then she reached for the intercom button. Isabelle stopped at row 18. She looked at Vanessa Monroe with eyes that had gone from professional coldness to something hotter and less controlled. "Ma'am," Isabelle said, "this is your final warning. Remove the jewelry or you will be removed from this aircraft when we land." Vanessa looked up at her. "We're at 35,000 feet. We're not landing for another 90 minutes. What exactly are you doing right now? I'm enforcing policy." "There is no policy," Vanessa said. The captain confirmed that. "You're harassing me." "I'm doing my job. Your job is to ensure passenger safety. I'm sitting in my seat wearing a necklace. I'm not a safety threat. I'm not disrupting anything. You are." Isabelle's face went red. "You think you can talk to me this way? You think you can disrespect my authority?" "I think," Vanessa said quietly, "that you're on very thin ice right now. And I think you should walk away." Isabelle didn't walk away. She reached for the necklace. "Don't," Vanessa said. Isabelle's fingers closed around the gold chain. "Don't you dare," Vanessa said again. Isabelle pulled. The chain held for 1 second. Vanessa's head jerked forward. Jordan shouted. Amara screamed. Then the clasp broke. The sound was tiny, a small metallic snap, but it reverberated through row 18 like a gunshot. The necklace came free in Isabelle's hand. Jordan was on his feet. Get off, my grandma Thomas Rivera was on his feet. She just assaulted her. Dr. Cartwright's voice cut through. "That's battery! That's a criminal act!" Marcus Webb's live stream exploded with comments. The viewer count jumped to 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. "Are you seeing this? She just ripped it off her neck. Someone call the police, get her badge number." Trevor. Blake moved down the aisle. "Everyone, sit down. This is a crew matter that stopped being a crew matter." The second she put her hands on a passenger, Thomas Rivera said. He didn't sit down. Isabelle stood in the aisle holding a dead woman's necklace in her fist. The small gold cross pendant swayed slightly. The broken clasp dangled. For 1 second she looked uncertain, like she'd just crossed a line she hadn't meant to cross and didn't know how to uncross it. Then her expression hardened, became defiant. "This is confiscated airline property," she said. Vanessa Monroe stood up. She stood up slowly, with the weight of 68 years. With the weight of every time she'd been told she didn't belong and decided that their opinion didn't matter. With the weight of her mother's 50 years of wearing that necklace through Birmingham and the civil rights era, and every ordinary day after. She stood up and the entire cabin went silent. "Give me my mother's necklace," Vanessa said. Her voice was so quiet it was almost a whisper, but it carried. Every person within 10 rows heard it clearly. Isabelle took a half-step back. Involuntary. Her body recognized something her mind hadn't processed yet. "Give me my mother's necklace," Vanessa said again. Same tone, same volume, same absolutely terrifying calm. "Ma'am, if you don't sit down..." Vanessa pulled out her phone. She didn't look at it. She kept her eyes on Isabelle Durant. "Diana," she said into the phone. "Execute Protocol 5. Diana Fletcher's voice came through steady and professional. "Confirmed, Mrs. Monroe. Accessing employee files now." The cabin was absolutely still. Every passenger in listening range had stopped everything. Stopped reading. Stopped scrolling. Stopped breathing. "What's..." "Protocol 5. Someone whispered 3 rows back. Vanessa looked at Isabelle Durant. "You're about to find out." The cockpit door opened. Captain Michael Santos emerged. He'd been monitoring the cabin through the intercom system. He'd heard raised voices. He'd heard a passenger scream. And he'd heard enough to know this had escalated beyond a simple disagreement. "What's happening back here?" he said. His voice was measured, professional, but his eyes were sharp, moving across the scene in front of him. Isabelle Durant standing in the aisle, something in her closed fist. A black woman standing in row 18. 2 teenagers, one crying. Multiple passengers on their feet. Phones out. Recording. Isabelle turned to him. "Captain, this passenger has been disruptive since boarding. She refused multiple safety directives. I had to confiscate dangerous materials that Captain Santos." Vanessa interrupted quietly. "My name is Vanessa Monroe." She reached into her purse. To her, not quickly, not aggressively. Slowly and deliberately, giving everyone time to see exactly what she was doing. She pulled out a card. Not a credit card. Not a driver's license. A corporate identification badge. She held it out to Captain Santos. He took it, looked at it. His expression didn't change for 3 full seconds. Then the color drained from his face. "Mrs. Monroe?" he said softly. I didn't know you were on this flight. The cabin leaned in. Every passenger close enough to hear was now focused completely on this exchange. From 3 rows forward, Dr. Cartwright called out, "Who is she?" Captain Santos looked at the ID card in his hand, then at Vanessa, then at the passengers watching. He made a decision. "This is Vanessa Monroe," he said clearly. "Majority shareholder of Apex Airlines." The words hung in the air. "Wait," Marcus Webb said into his live stream. His voice had gone up an octave. "What?" Vanessa looked at the cabin, at the passengers staring, at Thomas Rivera with his phone still recording, at Dr. Cartwright leaning forward in her seat, at Marcus Webb, whose live stream viewer count was now passing 10,000. "I own 51% of this airline," Vanessa said. "I acquired my controlling stake 5 years ago through Monroe Capital Group. The board knows, the executive team knows, the employees don't." She paused. "Until now." Isabelle Durant had gone completely still. The necklace was still in her fist, but her hand had gone slack. Her mouth opened slightly. "No," she said. "That's your—" "Diana." Vanessa said into her phone, still on speaker so the entire section could hear. "Are you still on the line?" "Yes, Mrs. Monroe. Pull Isabelle Durant's complete employment file. I want every complaint, every write-up, every incident report from the last 12 years. "Already on screen," Diana said. "Mrs. Monroe, there are 14 formal complaints, 9 from passengers of color, all marked resolved internally." The cabin reacted. Gasps, murmurs. Someone said, "Oh my God," very clearly. "Resolved internally means buried," Vanessa said. "Correct. That would be the accurate assessment." Vanessa turned to Isabelle. 14 people tried to tell someone you were doing this. 14 people were ignored." She paused. "How many more didn't report it at all?" Isabelle was shaking now. Visible tremors. "I was following policy." "You were following nothing," Vanessa said. "You were exercising your own bias behind a uniform and a smile. You saw a black woman in row 18 and you decided she didn't belong. You decided her jewelry was suspicious. You decided she needed to be controlled." She stepped forward. "You were wrong, Mrs. Monroe," Captain Santos said carefully. "I think we should." "No," Vanessa said. "Not gently. We're doing this here. Now. In front of witnesses." She looked at Isabelle. "Because that's what you did to me. In front of my grandchildren. In front of 200 passengers. You humiliated me publicly. You physically assaulted me publicly, so your termination happens publicly." "Termination?" Isabelle's voice cracked. "You can't—" "There's a process," Vanessa said. "Confirm termination of Isabelle Durant. Log it as board-level disciplinary action. Security protocol, effective immediately." "Confirmed." Diana's voice came through the phone speaker. "Her access badge is deactivated. Payroll has been notified. Security will meet the aircraft." "You can't do this," Isabelle said. Her voice had gone high and thin. "There are procedures. There's HR. There's I can do this," Vanessa said quietly. "I own this airline, and you just committed battery against a passenger in front of multiple witnesses while wearing my uniform and representing my company." She held out her hand. "Now give me my mother's necklace." Isabelle looked at the necklace in her hand, looked at Vanessa, looked at Captain Santos. The captain's expression was stone. "Give her the necklace," he said. Isabelle's hand opened. The necklace fell into Vanessa's palm. The broken chain. The small cross. The tiny diamond that had belonged to Dorothy Monroe for 50 years. Vanessa closed her fingers around it. "Trevor Blake," Vanessa said. The male flight attendant had been standing frozen near the front galley. He jolted. "Yes, ma'am." How many of those 14 complaints did you witness personally? Silence, Vanessa said. Pull Trevor Blake's file. Mrs. Monroe. I was just following orders. Vanessa cut him off. That defense didn't work at Nuremberg. It won't work here. How many complaints did you witness? Trevor's face was gray. 3, he said finally. Maybe 4. And you said nothing. I thought he stopped. I thought she was right. I thought they were policy violations. Even when the captain said there was no such policy. Even when Dr. Cartwright cited the actual regulations. Even when you watched her reach out and rip a necklace off a passenger's neck. Trevor said nothing. You're terminated as well, Vanessa said. Diana, add Trevor Blake to the security list. Confirmed, Diana said. A third flight attendant, Sophia Ramirez, was pressed against the galley wall. Her face was tear-streaked. Vanessa looked at her. Sophia, how long have you worked here? 3 months, ma'am, Sophia whispered. Did you participate in this? I didn't stop it, Sophia said. She was crying openly now. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I'm so sorry. I should have said something. I should have done something. Vanessa studied her. You're on probation. You'll undergo mandatory bias training. You'll have monthly reviews for 6 months. But you keep your job because you're honest, and because everyone deserves one chance to learn from a mistake. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. Grace Palmer, Vanessa said. Grace stepped forward from the mid-cabin jump seat. She looked nervous but steady. You tried to speak up, Vanessa said. You were silenced. You filed a report anyway. That took courage. I should have done more. You did what you could in the moment, Vanessa interrupted. You witnessed. You documented. You tried to create space for de-escalation. That matters. She paused. You're promoted to lead flight attendant for this route effective immediately. Your first assignment is to help me rebuild the culture that allowed this to happen. Grace's eyes went wide. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thomas Rivera across the aisle spoke up. Ma'am, I've been recording this entire interaction. Would you like the footage? Vanessa looked at him. Yes, please. And I'd like you to serve as a witness for any formal proceedings. Absolutely, Thomas said. 27 years as a firefighter. I know how to document a scene. Dr. Cartwright from 3 rows forward. I'll provide a written statement and testify if needed. I've been documenting everything as well. Marcus Webb. My live stream has 15,000 viewers right now. It's being screen recorded by dozens of people. This is permanent digital evidence. Vanessa nodded to each of them. Thank you. All of you. She turned back to Isabelle Durant. You have 10 minutes to collect your personal belongings from your work area. Security will escort you off the aircraft when we land. If you say one word to any passenger during that time, I will pursue criminal charges for battery. Do you understand? Isabelle's voice was barely audible. Yes, good. Vanessa's voice was ice. Now get out of my airline. Isabelle turned and walked toward the back galley. Her movements were stiff, mechanical. The elegant composure that had carried her through 12 years of flying was completely gone. What was left was just a woman who'd made a choice she couldn't take back. Trevor followed her without being told. The cabin was absolutely silent. Then someone started clapping. It was Thomas Rivera. Slow, steady, deliberate claps. Then Dr. Cartwright joined in. Then Marcus Webb. Then the man sitting next to Thomas. Then the couple 2 rows back. Then Grace Palmer still standing in the aisle. Within 30 seconds, the entire front section of the aircraft was applauding. Not wildly, not performatively, with the genuine measured energy of people who had witnessed something and had an opinion about it. Jordan looked at his grandmother with an expression somewhere between awed and confused. "Grandma," he whispered, "did you just fire her?" "Yes, baby," Vanessa said. "I did. On an airplane. On my airplane." Amara reached over and touched the broken necklace in Vanessa's hand. "Can it be fixed?" "Yes," Vanessa said. "It can be fixed, and it'll be stronger where it broke." Captain Santos approached. "Mrs. Monroe," he said quietly, "I need to ask you something. Ask. Were you aware of the complaint pattern before today I was investigating it?" Vanessa said. "I've been flying coach regularly for 3 months testing the system. Today was the first time I experienced it directly." Captain Santos absorbed this. "I want you to know I wasn't aware of the complaints being buried." "If I had been, I believe you," Vanessa said. "This isn't about blaming everyone. It's about fixing a broken system." She looked at him steadily. "I want your honest assessment of crew culture on your routes. I want to know if this is isolated or widespread, and I want it in writing within 24 hours. "You'll have it," Captain Santos said. He returned to the cockpit. The door closed. The seatbelt sign chimed on. Unexpected turbulence. Vanessa sat down. Jordan sat beside her. Amara pressed close on the other side. Vanessa opened her hand and looked at the broken necklace, the chain that had survived 50 years around her mother's neck, the cross her mother had worn through Birmingham and the Freedom Rides and every ordinary Tuesday after, the diamond chip that had caught light in 1,000 different moments in hospital rooms and church pews and kitchen tables. Broken now, the clasp snapped clean through, but still hers, still her mother's, still carrying everything it had always carried. She closed her hand around it again. Diana's voice came through her phone, which was still connected. "Mrs. Monroe, I've been contacted by 3 of the passengers who filed previous complaints. They saw the live stream. They want to speak with you. Schedule meetings," Vanessa said. "I want to hear their stories personally. All of them. Understood. Also, the board is requesting an emergency meeting. Tell them I'll address them tomorrow. Tonight I'm having dinner with my grandchildren." She ended the call. The plane leveled out. The turbulence passed. The seatbelt sign chimed off again. Vanessa looked out the window at the clouds below, at the endless sky, at the world spread out beneath them. She thought about her mother. About Dorothy Monroe, who had cleaned houses and raised children and worn the same necklace every day because it had been her mother's, and would someday be her daughter's, and that kind of continuity mattered. She thought about the 14 passengers who had filed complaints and been told their experiences didn't count. She thought about how many more had stayed silent because they didn't think anyone would listen. She thought about Isabelle Durant sitting in the back galley right now, probably crying, probably terrified, probably still not understanding what she'd actually done wrong. And she thought about what came next. Not just the terminations, not just the meetings and the press releases and the policy changes, the real work, the harder work. The work of looking at a company she owned and asking herself how this had been allowed to happen under her watch, how complaints had been buried, how passengers had been hurt, how her airline had failed the very people it existed to serve. That work started tomorrow, but tonight she was going to hold her grandchildren's hands and tell them that standing up for yourself matters, that speaking truth to power matters, that refusing to accept being made small matters, and that sometimes justice looks like an old woman on an airplane holding a broken necklace and deciding that broken things can be fixed. The plane flew on through the afternoon sky, carrying 200 passengers and 1 fired flight attendant and 1 grandmother who had just changed everything. The plane landed in Atlanta 90 minutes later. As it taxied to the gate, Vanessa could see the security vehicle following alongside on the tarmac. 2 officers. Standard procedure for a passenger removal, except this time they were here for the crew. Isabelle Durant and Trevor Blake sat in the back galley, both silent. Neither had emerged since the confrontation. Sofia Ramirez had brought them water. At one point, her face sympathetic but careful. Grace Palmer had taken over their duties with quiet efficiency, assisted by the other flight attendants who hadn't been involved. She'd made several PA announcements thanking passengers for their patience, never once mentioning what had happened. But everyone knew. The whole plane knew. Marcus Webb's live stream had been viewed 40,000 times before they even touched ground. Screenshots were already circulating on social media. Someone had created a hashtag. Hashtag Vanessa Monroe. The plane stopped at the gate. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Captain Santos's voice came over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson. On behalf of the entire crew, thank you for flying Apex Airlines. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign has been turned off and we've reached the gate." A pause. Then quieter. Clearly off script. "And thank you for your patience today." The cabin door opened. The security officers boarded immediately. They spoke briefly with Captain Santos, then moved toward the back galley. Passengers craned their necks to watch. Some had their phones out, still recording. Isabelle Durant emerged from the galley carrying a small bag. Her face was blotchy. Her perfect hair had come loose from its bun. The elegant flight attendant who'd walked down the aisle 4 hours ago was gone. What was left looked small and frightened. Trevor Blake followed her stone-faced. They walked up the aisle toward the exit. Every passenger watched them pass. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. The silence was louder than any jeering could have been. When they reached row 18, Isabel's steps faltered. Just for a second. She didn't look at Vanessa, kept her eyes straight ahead, but her step faltered. Then they were past and gone, and the cabin door closed behind them. The passengers began to deplane. As Vanessa stood to collect her carry-on, the woman from the row in front of them turned around. She was young, maybe 25, black, wearing business casual. "Ma'am," she said. Her voice was shaking. "I was on an Apex flight 6 months ago. Different attendant, different route. But the same thing happened to me." She touched her ear where a small gold stud sat. "She said my earrings were too large for safety, made me take them off. I didn't say anything. I just did it." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry I didn't say anything," she said. Vanessa reached out and touched her arm. "Don't apologize. Say something next time. That's how this changes." The woman nodded, wiping her eyes. "What's your name?" she asked. Vanessa said. The woman smiled, shaky but real. "I'm going to remember today for the rest of my life. Thank you." She walked away toward the exit. Thomas Rivera was waiting in the aisle. He'd collected his bag but wasn't rushing to leave. "Mrs. Monroe," he said. "I sent the recording to my daughter. She works in PR. She's already been contacted by 3 news outlets asking for comment. Do you want me to have her send you the inquiries?" "Please," Vanessa said. "And thank you for being willing to speak up." "I have daughters," Thomas said simply. "Granddaughters. I'll always speak up." Dr. Cartwright appeared from 3 rows forward, leather bag over her shoulder. She handed Vanessa a business card. "My contact information," she said. "I taught constitutional law for 35 years. I've seen a lot of injustice. What you did today, that's how you create change. Immediate accountability and transparent process." Vanessa took the card. "Thank you, Dr. Cartwright." "Call me Helen," the professor said. "And call me if you need an expert witness for anything that comes after this. I'm retired. I have time." Marcus Webb was the last to approach. His phone was finally down, live stream ended. 58,000 views, he said. It's still climbing. 3 news networks have already reached out to me. Do you want to make a statement? Vanessa thought about it. Not yet, but I'll be making one soon. Can I have your contact information? He handed her his card. I run a tech startup. We build transparency tools for businesses. If you ever want to talk about building accountability into your systems, I'd love to help. Vanessa pocketed the card. I'll take you up on that. They deplaned into the terminal. The gate area was quiet. No news crews yet, though Vanessa suspected that would change soon. Diana Fletcher was waiting just outside security. She was 45, efficient, with the professional polish of someone who'd been managing executives for 20 years. She saw Vanessa and the children and moved toward them immediately. Mrs. Monroe, she said. Are you all right? We're fine, Vanessa said. Tired, but fine. Diana looked at Jordan and Amara. You two hungry? There's a good restaurant on Concourse B, Starving Jordan admitted. Diana smiled. Let's get you fed. Then we'll deal with everything else. They walked through the terminal. A few people recognized Vanessa from the live stream. A young man stopped mid-stride staring. A woman whispered to her companion. But nobody approached. Not yet. They found a quiet restaurant, got a table in the back. Diana ordered for everyone, making sure the kids had what they wanted, giving Vanessa space to breathe. When the food came, Diana pulled out her tablet. I've been fielding calls for the last hour. 3 news networks, 2 major papers, the local Atlanta station, someone from 60 Minutes, and the board. The board is very concerned. Concerned about what Vanessa asked. Public relations, Diana said dryly. They want to know how to manage the narrative. The narrative is simple, Vanessa said. An employee committed battery against a passenger. She was terminated. We're investigating how many other passengers were targeted and how those complaints were handled. That's the truth. We tell the truth. Diana nodded, making notes. The FAA has been notified by Captain Santos. They'll be opening an investigation. Good. And I've scheduled meetings with 3 of the passengers who filed previous complaints. They're all willing to speak with you. 2 by phone, 1 in person if you're available. I'm available, Vanessa said. Schedule them. Jordan, who'd been quiet through all of this, looked at his grandmother. Grandma, he said. Are you going to be on the news? Probably, Vanessa said. Is that scary? Vanessa thought about it. A little, but necessary. Why is it necessary? Because Vanessa said, choosing her words carefully. If I don't tell my story, someone else will tell it for me, and they might not tell it right. So I have to speak up even when it's uncomfortable. Amara was watching her grandmother with those sharp eyes. What are you going to say? I'm going to say that what happened today was wrong, and that I'm going to fix the systems that allowed it to happen, and that every passenger who's been treated this way deserves to be heard. She paused. And I'm going to say that my mother wore this necklace for 50 years and nobody had the right to take it from me. She opened her hand. The broken necklace lay across her palm. Can we fix it tonight? Amara asked. Vanessa smiled. No, baby, but we'll fix it this week. And then I'm going to wear it every day just like Grandma Dorothy did. They finished eating. Diana handled the check. As they stood to leave the restaurant, manager approached. Mrs. Monroe, he said hesitantly. Yes, I saw the live stream. What happened to you was wrong. Your meal is on the house. Vanessa looked at him. Young man, probably 30. Sincere expression. That's kind of you, she said. But I can pay. I know you can, he said. I'd still like to do this. Vanessa nodded. Thank you. They left the restaurant and headed for ground transportation. Diana had arranged a car. As they walked through the terminal, Vanessa's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Mrs. Monroe, a woman's voice said, "My name is Patricia Chen. Wait, Chen." That was supposed to be a forbidden name. "Let me restart, Mrs. Monroe," a woman's voice said. "My name is Patricia Williams. I'm a producer at CNN. I know you've just landed, and this is probably the last thing you want to deal with, but I'd like to request an interview. We can do it on your schedule at your convenience." Vanessa stopped walking. "Ms. Williams," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you want to interview me?" A pause. Then, honestly, "Because I've been covering airline discrimination cases for 3 years. I've documented dozens of complaints. I've interviewed passengers who were humiliated, violated, ignored, and I've never once seen accountability happen in real time. You did something today that changes the conversation. People need to see that." Vanessa thought about it. "I'll consider it. Have my assistant schedule a preliminary call." She gave the producer Diana's number and hung up. They reached the car. A black sedan professional driver. As they settled into the back seat, Jordan leaned against Vanessa's shoulder. He was exhausted. The adrenaline had worn off and left him depleted. Vanessa put her arm around him. "You okay, baby?" "Yeah," he murmured. "Just tired." Amara was on Vanessa's other side, already half asleep. The car pulled away from the curb. Diana in the front seat turned around. "Mrs. Monroe, I need to brief you on something. The board has scheduled an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They want answers." "They'll get answers," Vanessa said. "All of them. Even the ones they don't want to hear." Diana smiled slightly. "I've prepared a preliminary report on the complaint handling process. The chain of decision-making. The people who signed off on burying those 14 complaints. Send it to me tonight," Vanessa said. "I want to review it before the meeting, already in your inbox." The car drove through Atlanta. The city lights were coming on. Evening traffic was building. Vanessa looked down at the broken necklace still in her hand. She'd been holding it since Isabelle Durant gave it back. Hadn't put it down once. The chain was delicate. The clasp had snapped cleanly. It wouldn't be hard to fix. Any decent jeweler could do it in an hour. But Vanessa knew it would never be quite the same. There would always be a mark where it broke. A tiny imperfection in the gold. Visible if you knew where to look. And that was fine. Some things were stronger for being broken and repaired. Some things carried their scars and were better for it. She thought about her mother, about Dorothy Monroe, who had lived through Birmingham and Bull Connor and dogs and fire hoses and had come out the other side still standing, still wearing her necklace, still believing that dignity mattered. Vanessa would get this necklace repaired. She would put it back on, and she would wear it for the rest of her life, just like her mother had. And every time she looked at it, she would remember this day, this flight, this moment when she stood up and refused to be made small. The car drove on through the Atlanta evening carrying a grandmother and her grandchildren and a broken necklace toward whatever came next. The emergency board meeting happened at 8 o'clock the next morning in Apex Airlines headquarters, downtown Atlanta. Vanessa arrived 15 minutes early. She wore a navy suit, professional and sharp, and her mother's necklace repaired overnight by a jeweler Diana had found who'd opened his shop at 6 a.m. specifically for this. The repair was flawless. You had to know exactly where to look to see the tiny mark where the clasp had been resoldered. Vanessa knew exactly where to look. The boardroom held 12 people. Directors, executives, legal counsel. They'd all seen the live stream, all read Diana's report, all knew exactly what this meeting was about. The chairman, a white man in his 60s named Richard Moss, opened with Vanessa, "We need to discuss crisis management strategy." Vanessa set her briefcase on the table. "We need to discuss how 14 formal complaints were buried and why the employees responsible are still working here." The room went quiet. "I'm not interested in managing the narrative," Vanessa continued. I'm interested in fixing the problem. The narrative will take care of itself when the problem is fixed. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a document. This is Diana's report on the complaint handling process over the last 18 months. I want everyone to read it. It details every complaint filed against Isabelle Durant, who reviewed them, who signed off on the resolutions, and what those resolutions actually were. She slid copies across the table. Buried, she said. Every single one, marked as resolved internally without any meaningful investigation, retraining, or discipline. Richard Moss picked up the report. His face tightened as he read. Patrick Hughes, Vanessa said. Regional Operations Manager. He overrode 2 HR recommendations for bias training. I want to know why. The General Counsel, a woman named Jennifer Rodriguez, spoke up. We've already requested a meeting with Mr. Hughes. He's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Good, Vanessa said. I also want a complete audit of all passenger complaints filed in the last 5 years. All of them. Every region. Every route. I want to know if this is isolated or widespread. That's a significant undertaking, Richard said carefully. I don't care, Vanessa said. Do it anyway. She pulled out another document. This is a proposal for an independent passenger advocacy office, third-party oversight, direct reporting line to the board, not to operations management. Every complaint gets reviewed by someone who doesn't have a vested interest in burying it. The CFO, a man named David Park. Wait, that's a forbidden name. Let me use a different name. The CFO, a man named David Morrison, looked at the numbers. This will cost, I don't care what it costs, Vanessa said. I care what it prevents. How much did yesterday's incident cost us in reputation? In passenger trust, in the stock price point taken, David said quietly. I'm also mandating company-wide bias training, Vanessa continued. Every employee, every level, no exceptions, no grandfather clauses. If you work for Apex Airlines, you take the training. The VP of HR, a Hispanic woman named Maria Gonzalez, nodded. I'll coordinate with external consultants. We'll need to bring in experts. Do it, Vanessa said. She pulled out a third document. This is a compensation proposal for the 14 passengers who filed complaints. Full refunds, public apology letters, compensation for their time and emotional distress. Some of those incidents happened years ago, Richard said. I don't care, Vanessa said. They filed complaints in good faith. We failed them. We make it right. The room was silent. One more thing, Vanessa said. I'm going public with this. Press conference tomorrow. I'm going to own what happened. Apologize directly. Outline the reforms we're implementing. And I'm going to name the 14 passengers and ask them to come forward so we can make this right. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Legal advises against, I don't care what legal advises, Vanessa said. This is the right thing to do. We're doing it. She closed her briefcase. Questions. Richard Moss looked at her. Vanessa, he said carefully. You understand this is going to be expensive, time-consuming, disruptive. Yes, Vanessa said, and necessary. A pause. Then Richard nodded. All right. You have the board's support. Good, Vanessa said, because we're going to fix this airline. Starting now. The press conference happened 24 hours later. Vanessa stood at a podium in front of a room full of reporters. Cameras, microphones. The live stream was being broadcast on 3 major networks. She wore the same navy suit, the same repaired necklace. Good afternoon, she said. My name is Vanessa Monroe. I own 51% of Apex Airlines. Yesterday, I was on Flight 447 from Chicago to Atlanta. What happened on that flight is unacceptable. A member of our crew physically removed my late mother's necklace from around my neck after I declined to take it off voluntarily. That crew member has been terminated. So has another crew member who witnessed and supported her actions. She paused. But that's not enough. because I've learned that this wasn't an isolated incident. 14 passengers filed formal complaints against this same employee over 12 years. All 14 complaints were buried, marked as resolved without any real investigation or accountability. Her voice was steady. To those 14 passengers, I'm sorry. You trusted us with your complaints. We failed you. I am personally committed to making this right. We will be reaching out to each of you directly. She looked at the camera. To every passenger who has ever been mistreated on one of my flights, I want to hear from you. We're creating an independent passenger advocacy office. Third-party oversight. Real accountability. Your voice matters. The reporters started shouting questions. Vanessa pointed to one. Yes, Mrs. Monroe. What message does this send to other airlines? The message, Vanessa said, is that accountability matters. That passenger complaints matter. That we have to do better. All of us. Another reporter. Do you think this is a problem across the industry? I think it's a problem anywhere. There's unchecked authority and inadequate oversight. Which is why we're not just fixing this at Apex. We're sharing our new policies with the industry. We're being transparent about what went wrong and how we're fixing it. One more question. What would you say to Isabelle Durant? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. I would say that she made a choice that cost her everything. And I hope she learns from it. But her termination is not negotiable. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. When it ended, Diana met Vanessa in the back room. Your phone has been ringing non-stop. 6 of the 14 passengers have called. They want to meet with you. Schedule them, Vanessa said. All of them. Over the next week, she met with each one. They told their stories. Different flights, different years, same pattern. Jewelry, clothing, hair accents. Different surface reasons, same underlying bias. Vanessa listened to every story, apologized personally, cut checks for compensation that went beyond the minimum required. One woman, a nurse named Denise Carter, cried when Vanessa handed her the check. It's not about the money, she said. It's about someone finally believing me. I believe you, Vanessa said, and I'm sorry it took this long. 6 months later, the reforms were in place. Independent advocacy office fully staffed. Complaint rate down 60%. Employee satisfaction scores up. Passenger trust increasing. The story became a case study. Business schools taught it. Training programs referenced it. Other airlines quietly adopted similar policies. Vanessa continued flying coach, regularly, unannounced. She wore her mother's necklace on every flight. Jordan and Amara flew with her sometimes. Part of the monitoring process. Part of the healing. And every time Vanessa fastened that repaired clasp, she thought about what her mother had taught her. That dignity isn't negotiable. That standing up costs something. And that the cost is always worth it. Let me tell you why this story matters to me personally. I've never owned an airline. I don't have Vanessa Monroe's wealth or power. But I know what it feels like to walk into a room and have someone decide who you are before you even open your mouth. I was 19 years old working my first retail job when a customer looked at me and said, I want to speak to someone who actually works here. I was wearing a name tag, a uniform. I just greeted her. But somehow I didn't look like someone who belonged behind that counter. I've worn my grandmother's ring every day since she died. It's simple gold, nothing fancy. But it's hers. It carries her. And if someone tried to take it from me the way Isabelle Durant took that necklace from Vanessa, I would fight just as hard. Because here's what you need to understand. When Isabelle ripped that necklace off Vanessa's neck, she wasn't just breaking a chain. She was trying to break the connection between a daughter and her mother, between past and present, between dignity and dismissal. She was saying, you don't get to decide what matters. I decide what matters. And Vanessa Monroe said, no, you don't. That's the lesson here. Not that you need to be a CEO to demand respect. Not that you need institutional power to stand your ground. The lesson is that Vanessa could have revealed her identity immediately. She could have pulled out that ID card the second Isabelle approached and said, "Do you know who I am?" But she didn't. She waited. She let the situation unfold. She documented the pattern. She let Isabelle show exactly who she was before revealing who she herself was. That's strategic. That's deliberate. That's powerful. Because if Vanessa had led with her title, Isabelle would have backed down immediately. The behavior would have stopped, but the problem wouldn't have been exposed. Those 14 buried complaints would have stayed buried. The passengers who'd been targeted before would never have gotten their apologies or their compensation. Vanessa let it play out because she knew this wasn't about her as an individual. It was about how people like Isabelle see people like Vanessa. And once she had that documented, witnessed, recorded by multiple passengers, then she revealed who she was. Then she fired Isabelle. Then she fixed the system. Real change requires both immediate accountability and long-term reform. One without the other is incomplete. Firing Isabelle Durant felt good. I'm not going to lie, watching her walk off that plane in front of everyone, that felt like justice. But finding those 14 buried complaints, calling those passengers personally, implementing independent oversight, creating a system where future complaints won't be ignored. That's how you save the next person. That's how you make sure this doesn't just feel good in the moment, but actually changes things for everyone who comes after. So here's what I'm asking you to do. If you see something like this happening, don't be the person in row 22 who stays quiet and calls afterward to apologize for not speaking up. Be Thomas Rivera. Pull out your phone. Record it. Be a witness. Be Dr. Cartwright. Know your rights. Cite the regulations. Don't let someone make up rules and pretend they're law. Be Marcus Webb. Live stream it. Make it public. Let the digital record exist so it can't be denied later. And if it happens to you, be Vanessa Monroe. Stand your ground. Document everything. Don't accept being told your complaint was resolved internally. Demand to know what that means. Demand real answers. Because here's what Vanessa taught me. You don't need to own the airline to demand respect. You just need to refuse to accept anything less. Your power isn't in your title or your bank account. Your power is in your refusal to be erased, in your willingness to stand up when it costs you something, in your commitment to making sure the next person doesn't have to go through what you went through. Vanessa Monroe wore her mother's necklace as a reminder of where she came from, of the woman who raised her, of the values that built her. What's your reminder? What's the thing you carry that keeps you grounded, that connects you to your people, that nobody has the right to take from you? Maybe it's a piece of jewelry. Maybe it's a way of speaking. Maybe it's a name, a tradition, a practice that's yours. Whatever it is, you don't owe anyone an explanation for it. You don't need to justify it. You don't need permission to exist as yourself. And when someone tries to make you smaller, when someone tries to tell you that you don't belong, when someone reaches out and tries to take what's yours, you have every right to stand up and say no. Not politely, not apologetically, just no. Vanessa Monroe is 68 years old. She's lived through Birmingham and Wall Street and more boardrooms than most of us will ever see. She's built a $4 billion company from nothing. She's raised 3 children alone. She's survived losses that would break most people, and she still had to fight for basic respect on an airplane. That should make you angry. It makes me angry. But it should also make you hopeful, because she won. Not just for herself, for 14 other passengers, for every future passenger who won't have to deal with Isabelle Durant, for every employee who now knows that complaints will actually be investigated. She won because she refused to be quiet, because she documented everything, because she had the power to change things and she used it. You might not have her resources, but you have your voice, you have your phone, You have witnesses around you who might be waiting for someone to speak up first. Use them. And if you're in a position of power, if you're the manager, the supervisor, the person who receives the complaints, be Vanessa. Don't bury it. Don't mark it resolved internally and move on. Fix it. Because that's how we build a world where people like Isabelle Durant don't get 12 years to hurt passengers before anyone stops them. Where complaints are taken seriously the first time. Where speaking up doesn't require you to be a billionaire to be heard. That's the world Vanessa Monroe is building. One reformed airline at a time. One independent advocacy office at a time. One apology and one check and one policy change at a time. It's not fast. It's not easy. But it's happening. And it started with one grandmother on one flight refusing to take off her dead mother's necklace. So, here's my question for you. What are you refusing to accept? What's your line in the sand? What's the thing you won't back down on, even when someone in a uniform tells you to? Drop a comment and tell me. This community is a safe space to share those stories. Because every week we're bringing you stories of people who refuse to be erased, who stood up when it cost them something, who changed the conversation not just for themselves, but for everyone who comes after. Vanessa Monroe wore her mother's necklace as a reminder. Let this story be yours. Remember, you don't need to own the airline to demand respect. You just need to refuse to accept anything less. I'll see you in the next one. If this story moved you, do 3 things for me. 1. Share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it. Let it travel. Because stories like this change things when enough people hear them. 2. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell. Turn on notifications. Every week we bring you real stories of justice, dignity, and people who refuse to stay silent. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story if you have one. Tell me what moment in this video hit you hardest. This community exists because we believe everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone deserves justice. And sometimes, justice looks like a 68-year-old grandmother on an airplane who decided enough was enough. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of person who doesn't look away when something's wrong. See you next week with another story that proves one person can change everything. Subscribe, like, share. Speak up. Always speak up.